so we have the Epic Games Launcher installed, and so here I'll just double click on that icon to open it up. Okay, and this is more or less what we'll see. You might have to log in first. Once logged in, this again is pretty much what you'll see. Now the layout might change, so currently we have the home page. Here's a news page and you have a bunch of links and so forth. Then you have the store, and of course this is where you can go in and buy their games. Now for our purposes we are concerned with building games and Unreal Engine, so that is what we will concentrate on. I would like to mention that down here you have settings, so you can change, for example, if you wanted to minimize to the system tray, the English, so UK or US English, probably US right there, and so on. A bunch of settings that you might feel you want to change, like if they are kind of annoying, so the notifications here and so on. You also have things like friends. Again, I'm not going to go into detail on all of those settings here, but you do have the functionality. It will show you your active downloads. Okay, and you can click down here to go and manage your account and so on. Again, just a quick introduction, because the layout of this launcher will change. It has changed a couple of times, so it will probably change again. So the point is you want to look here for Unreal Engine. So I'll click on that. Then it will open up a tab like this. We have this launch. So if you don't have an engine version installed, you probably won't see this. You have to install one first. We'll get to that shortly. But you have news. So you can click on news. You have featured content and so forth. Here you can click to go to YouTube. Answer Hub is very important. I'll click on that. Okay, and this is more or less what we get. You'll see recommended questions. You can start to answer people's questions here. So I'm not going to go over all of the functionality again, maybe in another video, but this is important. You can ask questions, you can search. So maybe your question has already been answered. All right, so don't just post a question. You can go in search in here, and you have various sections and so forth. Then of course the forums is important as well. You will see things like announcement and releases, marketplace, development discussion, okay, and so on. You can post your work in progress if you feel like it, and in that way you can always get some feedback, okay, on your projects. So it's especially useful if you want to post your scenes to get feedback again and get critiqued. You might not always want to share your game ideas and stuff in here, but characters that you might be working on and stuff like that, maybe for practice, if you want feedback on that, you can post them in here. The roadmap is here as well. That is useful if you want to stay up to date with like the direction of development and what they are working on. That is currently on these Trello boards, which look something like this. Okay, shipped with 4.24, done for 4.25, and future releases. So basically what they have planned for the future. Okay, then you have this Learn tab. We'll actually get back to that Learn tab, and I'll move over to the library. So again, if you are new to all of this and you need help on your projects, don't be shy to post in the forums. Don't be shy to post your work in progress stuff. If you want feedback, as you progress as a modeler or something like that, post in the forums, get some feedback, participate in the game jams maybe if you are unsure of what to do with your project. And again, that's Unreal Engine, the Unreal Engine tab. Here you can see again Answer Hub for posting your questions, maybe helping out if you're kind of experienced, you're starting to specialize in a certain area, go and help other people out. Again, just make sure that you are not kind of duplicating questions. If someone else asked that question already and it's been answered, don't post it again unless again it's outdated. You want updated information. Again, forums as well. You can post some questions, maybe participate in discussions and show off your stuff. Okay, so let's just go back to the library. So in this part of the course, we want to install Unreal Engine, open it up, and actually start to do something. So how can we do that? I actually have this user account here that's fairly clean that I use to teach this stuff to you. So I have a few things here from previous videos and stuff, that you probably will not have. So how can we add an engine version? Because again, you probably don't have one. So you can just click this plus, install a new version of the Unreal Engine. You click that and you'll see this will show up. You can click that to remove that slot, add one again to add a slot. You can click this drop down and you can go all the way back to version 4.01. Okay, so you can go in and install all of the versions pretty much since the release of Unreal Engine 4. And that's important because there might be a problem with the latest version, or you might have compatibility. So let's say there's an old project, you want to go back and install that, from content examples or community project and various other examples. And that might not be compatible with the latest versions. You want to go in, you want to download an older version, and we'll actually take a look at this shortly. So actually, for example, I'll just jump over to Learn here for a second. Okay, so in the Learn tab, you can click on Get Started. You have a bunch of tutorials, featured and trending stuff, and then you have samples. Now, samples is important, is for you to learn from. There are a few things from the community, but a lot of this here is from Epic Games. So this content examples here is very important. We'll talk about that again later. But for example, you can scroll through here and see you have a bunch of stuff that you can take a look at. Now, one of those is this Feature Store 2014, which is a fairly old demo. This is Epic's GDC 2014 demo. And you can see the supported engine versions 4.4 to 4.11. You can see that if I hover here, it says no compatible engine installed. So you have to install a compatible engine to work with this first. Okay, so that is why this stuff in the library is important. Now I can go back and install 4.11, for example. And now I can click install. I can also set this as the current version. So now you can see Unreal Engine 4.11. Now it's not installed. It will show me that. You can click here to switch between the engine versions, the slots that you have here. Remove it. You can remove that, or again, you can click this remove slot as well. You have more options. So this one is installed and everything already. So you can click down here and then you can remove. You can create a shortcut. I'll left click on that. Then you'll get like a shortcut on your desktop like this to run it from. So you don't have to open this thing each time to run the engine. You can just click on that version that you want. Also, the same thing will apply to projects, but we'll talk about that a bit later. You also have things like this options component where you can decide to install additional stuff. So for example, you have the starter content right here, which is assets that can be added to your project, so to new projects. Here it shows you like how big it is. When something's missing, you can check that maybe and click apply to go and download those stuff and to update that. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that this is where those options are. So if the starter content is missing, for example, you can go here and you can check that. You can see the required storage space will change from 32 gigs to 33 when that is checked. Okay, now sometimes they'll post a 4.24 something. So the 2.4 is a major release or a major update to an engine version. So Unreal Engine 4 is a major iteration of the engine. Then you have .24, that is a major release of a particular version of the engine. And then of course we also have the dot something. Now That final version is more like a bug fix release, a smaller release. It's not meant to introduce a lot of new features. So the 4 dot something, if we get to 4.25 again, they'll probably go and add a bunch of new features, okay, and major iterations on the Unreal Engine 4. And the dot, that final dot, which is currently 0, if that goes up to 1 and so on, then again, that will include bug fixes and various other things. So that is a minor update. Then you have major updates, which again, usually introduce major enhancements, new functionality, and so forth. And the one to the left, this 4 here, is the current Unreal Engine version. Okay, now let's say you want to update this. You can often click on Update. You can click on Verify, and that will verify the current version. So let's say you need to update to 4.24.1 or something like that, but it doesn't show up. This update doesn't show up. You can click on Verify, and then in many cases that'll help with that. So in this case, I can click Update now. I'm just gonna run this version of Unreal Engine. You can click here to launch it, or here, and that launcher will minimize now, and the Unreal Editor will start to open up. This project browser shows up, and we don't have any projects. It says no recent projects found. Press more to browse for projects. So with the latest release of Unreal Engine 4, they added the functionality that was kind of separate for architecture, engineering, and construction, things like visualization and so forth. They had this thing called Unreal Engine Studio, but now it's all just kind of one thing. It's not separate anymore. So you can choose like what you want to do here. Of course, our focus will be on games. So I'll just choose games. Click next. For this demo here, I'll just choose the blank project. You have a bunch of other options, of course. You have top-down, third person, first person, and so forth. So you can play around with those. Here is the description. It'll give you a good idea of what you'll get with that project. I'm just going to choose blank, next. And now we choose like the kind of project that we want to have the engine set up for us. So we can choose whether it's Blueprint or C++. In this case, it doesn't matter too much. It's just our first project to see how this works. And then you can choose between scalable or maximum quality. For the most part, in this case, we'll be working with PC games and examples. So I'll just set that to maximum quality. Ray tracing, I'll just disable that. We'll talk about ray tracing, what that means later, but it basically has to do with lighting and rendering. It's kind of a recent enhancement. And so again, for the most part, we can just ignore this for right now, since we're working on, very basic examples here. Okay, you can choose desktop or console, for example. This is the target platform, and you can change this later as well. So I'll just choose desktop. And then you want to choose like whether you want the project to come with starter content or without it. So if you want it to be clean, you don't want that extra bloat in your project, and you want to, start from scratch, then you might want to choose no starter content. But since we are mainly experimenting here and learning the engine, you probably want to start with that starter content. You can choose the name. So I'll just change that to my first project, and you can change the location. Usually it's in your user name, so users, work, documents, and Unreal project. So you can change that, of course, but in this case, I'll just create the project. That'll close that project browser, and it'll open up the project. The engine opened up here. So this is the editor, the actual editor. We can see that we get the stuff here that we can move around and so on. Okay, you can play your game here, clicking that button. You can move around, stuff like that. We'll talk about this in more detail as we go along. For now, we can close this off. You can also notice here that this is your project's name right here. So you can close that off, or you can go to File, New Project. So this is the project section, Open Project, click on that. Currently you can see we only have this project here, my first project, and you can create a new project and so on. Now I'm just going to close this off. I'm not going to save anything, and I'll bring back my Epic Games launcher here. Go to the library, and you'll see your project will now show up in this center pane. Okay, if you launch the editor again from here, or from your desktop, the engine, not the project but the editor, you will get this project browser again. Now since we now do have a project, it'll find that, and you can double click on this to open it up, or click here, Open Project, or you can create new projects here. So you can click on that, and now you can see we can click Next. Or you can click here, open that project from here. Okay, or what you can do, you can open it from the launcher. You can right click on it to get more options. You can open it here, you can show it in the folder, you can create a shortcut, you can clone it, which basically means you can duplicate it, create a duplicate of that. That's useful if you want to make changes without affecting or, potentially changing your original project in a way that could set you back. So that's a good idea in that case to clone it instead. You can delete it. So if you create a shortcut, you might have to confirm that, and then that will create a shortcut on your desktop right here. So you can see my first project, and it shows you the engine version. So 4.24, double click on that, and that will also open your project. So that's useful. Again, you don't have to open up the Unreal Engine launcher and then the engine or your project. You can just open your project directly here. You can see my first project. Close that off again. So I went ahead and clicked on update here to update the engine. You can see it's downloading. Just kind of out of interest, I'll talk about the Vault in more detail later. So what you acquire in the marketplace and the Learn tab, as you'll see in the next section, you can see that will add that stuff in your Vault. So that is associated then with your account. You can see this here is queued. You can click here to cancel that installation. You can also see in downloads. If I click on downloads, you can see this is updating. You can pause it, and if you scroll down, you can see content examples that is queued. So that's going to download next. Okay, I'll close that to the side there. And even if I go to the home section, I'll just click pause here for a second, because the Wi-Fi is kind of slow. There's a really bad connection here, so it's kind of struggling to download this stuff. So even from here, you can click on downloads and that stuff shows up. So click on resume. It has kind of a different look from the other tab, but still it's updating. So I'll switch back to Unreal Engine, and you can see it is downloading. Okay, so I'll be back when this has finished with the update. So here you can see I have 4.24.1. So again, that is basically like a hotfix or a patch, a bug fix release. Okay, down here you can also see that I now have this CPP experiments project. So I've just begun recording the C++ video tutorials. So that is what that is for. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video here, and when I come back in the next video, we'll talk about the Vault, how to acquire assets, various projects and assets, and how to use and manage those. So I'll see you there.